And welcome to Telling the Tale. It's the podcast where we've gone through every single Telltale video game, including some that are not Telltale video games. I'm your host, Mitchell Farley-Wolf, and I'm joined, as always, by the cute... I almost said forever co-host at the same time, and it almost sounded a little bit like the word cute, so you know what?
I thought you were going to say, yeah, he's...
by the
you can
cute
do that.
also host, Dustin Cornelius Jackson. Hey, Dustin.
Thank you for noticing, Mitchell.
And you might have heard we have some other voices in the studio today. We're really excited to be speaking with two members of Skunkape Games, both Jake Rodkin and Emily Morganti.
Hi.
First off, so happy to have you on the show. We love talking with anyone involved with the story of Telltale, and both of you were heavily involved with the story of Telltale. So just a real treat for us.
Thank you so much.
Sure, happy to be here.
Yeah. So this kind of came into being because we were actually wrapping up the podcast, finishing it. We were really not going to come back for the second time, because the first time through the podcast, we went through all 140 episodes.
Wow.
However that's defined, of Telltale Games. Plus other things that happened later, like new Tales from the Borderlands or Return to Monkey Island, everything that's sort of tangentially related in that kind of way. We talked about that as well. And then this game Dispatch came out and kind of blindsided us. We had to start the podcast again. And then we wrapped that bit up as well. And as I was editing and getting ready to post the final episode of our show, the planned final episode of our show, y'all tweeted that you were remaking Poker Night.
So your podcast is like a ghost that is constantly trying to wrap up its unfinished business and finally leave this place, but we keep dragging you back to haunt us for longer. I'm sorry, or maybe you're the ones being haunted. I'm not sure where the analogy goes, but happy to be of service / sorry about that.
Yeah, it's like if a ghost just kept choosing to do it on its own accord.
I guess I'll haunt for a little while longer.
So I guess we can just start with the inciting event here. Poker Night at the Inventory is coming back. Dustin and I really like Poker Night. we really like it. We were surprised, I would say, that this is the choice of the next game to work on after Sam & Max. So I guess we just wanted to know why Poker Night in 2026. Appreciated but unguessable, I suppose we could say.
Jake, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I realize I've never had to try and answer this question, so I'm going to just kind of wing it. And Emily, if I say something that sounds just objectively incorrect, please leap in front of me at any opportunity. But I mean, I think that the simplest answer is when we finished Sam & Max: The Devil's Playhouse, there were a bunch of things that we were looking at that we could do next. But unsurprisingly, a lot of them are very complicated. The rights to various Telltale things are owned by various people. Skunkape is a very small studio that was really built to remaster Telltale games, especially sort of from the vintage that we were looking at with the Sam & Max games. And I think Poker Night seemed like, I would say we were like, oh, it's just sort of a small thing that maybe we could do while trying to figure out what our futures were like. And then we decided to do that, and then cracking open Poker Night revealed that it's a bigger game than it seems like. So it took us the good part of a year to do that work. So I would say that it was a mix of sort of a calculated, this will be a small thing, and then the reality of, oh, whoops, it took about as long as some of our other projects to do, which maybe from the outside does make it seem like Skunkape just went silent for a long time and then showed up with Poker Night. But I think that's how we got here. It was a game originally made, and I think we've calculated at the time when we worked on the original, I think we did it in about 80 work days, which on its face seems like that should mean it should be really quick to remaster. But what that kind of means is that it was almost like
Yeah.
like someone threw a concert and then later someone came back and was like, wow, that was really cool. Can we kind of shore this all up so that it could stand the test of time forever? And then you dig into it, you're like, oh, whoops, that was really just put up in a few weeks to last a few months. So the remastering process of sort of shoring it up as a more legitimate release makes the original sound sort of untoward. But I mean, like, we really wanted to fix a bunch of the low level issues with the poker gameplay and the character behavior and the sort of visual jank and glitches and camera cuts, and that stuff just went pretty deep in Poker Night because of how dynamic the game is. I feel like I'm just talking a lot, so I'm going to just hang back for a sec here.
Well, and something else I think about it is that Poker Night has been unavailable for 7 years.
Right.
So where there are other games that are, I mean, they're older, and even this was true for Sam & Max. Like they're older, but they're still playable. Poker Night is actually a game that was not available at all. So the remaster is both an opportunity to fix it up and make it look nicer and fix some bugs and stuff like that, but it's also just an opportunity to get it back out there. So I think that even though it might have been surprising to people that this is the game that we chose to do, there are different buckets of people who are excited about it for different reasons, and one of them is just that, like, oh, I can actually play this game now, and I couldn't before.
Yeah, it was gone. It was gone for a long time, and it turned out that even though for us it was like a small thing that, like I said, we made in like 80 days, there are a bunch of people out there who miss it and wish it was still around. Yeah. So being able to bring it back is also just a totally awesome thing to be able to do.
Oh, for sure. We've got some friends in some circles we run with that play just still a lot of Team Fortress 2 and are excited for that reason, for the hats and such. So I can totally understand that this is it's a strange game to not be allowed to play anymore for effectively a small poker simulation, but it's, I'm just excited to have an icon on my Switch menu that has Strong Bad in it again. That's a fun thing.
Yeah, everyone wants Strong Bad back on their Nintendo systems.
Yeah, definitely.
Also, I don't know if you guys know this, but a few months before we announced, it actually leaked in the Team Fortress community that these items were coming back in some way. People saw that the schema had changed or something had been changed in the back end that alerted them that, like, oh, something's going on with these items. And there was a YouTube, a person who leaked this on YouTube, and it got hundreds of thousands of views. So we were like, wow. Oh, okay, it's like there is a demand for this game that's beyond like the typical Telltale Games audience. Of people who, like, we didn't like, we're happy to bring it back for them, but they're not the usual audience that would be like kind of hanging on what Skunkape would do next.
Yeah, Dustin, we weren't plugged in enough to know that.
Yeah, I had no idea. This completely blindsided me.
Yeah.
I mean, I honestly had no idea about that part, but I did suspect that there were people who were paying attention to Poker Night, but not really. Let me think about how to talk about this in a way that isn't rambling. I'm going to do that by rambling, apparently. I'm just going to ramble about it. I'm still doing it.
Okay, we love that.
So I was one of the people who was on the Poker Night 1 team when it started. It was 4 of us. It was me, Sean Vanneman, who wrote it, Nick Herman, who did a lot of the choreography work and sort of cinematic stuff, and Tully Rafferty was a programmer on it. And our brief at the time was, as you could probably guess, make a spiritual successor to Telltale Texas Hold'em, which was the poker game they started. That's probably your guys' episode 1 of this podcast, I'm guessing, if you did it in order.
We actually did not quite go in order, but we did do it relatively early.
We got to it eventually.
Yeah.
So you guys have sort of a preferred, if you're a fan who's getting into the complete Telltale, here's your like recommended reading order, and it's of course the order that your podcast was recorded in, so that people can enjoy it along with you.
We started with Sam & Max season 1, I think, just because we're both really big Sam & Max fans, and we were excited to get into the remaster. That was around the same time the remaster was first coming out for that first season.
Oh yeah, it's your guys' theme song for the podcast.
Oh yeah,
the remaster opening.
Don't tell yourselves about that.
I mean, I didn't even notice that it was something owned by us being used in your no, nobody cares.
Okay, great.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. But the Telltale sort of managerial decree about Poker Night was unsurprisingly. I mean, the good faith version is it's going to be fun to have a bunch of characters hang out playing poker. We can sort of flex the writing muscles in our studio. We can push the our tool set further with all of the interactive, sort of reactive dialogue that can somehow play at the same time as they're playing cards. But the hope of it, of course, was if we have characters from 4 franchises all in it together, we have a chance to pull from 4 audiences, and we're going to get 4 times the whatever. I guess that was in the early 2010s, so people were probably using the word virality to talk about all of the success that it was going to get. But I honestly don't know how well Poker Night did at the time. But the thing that I've learned since, I think it's a thing that Emily, we noticed when doing the remasters, is that Sam and Max has a fan base that is, it's got all the same sort of curmudgeonly Gen X indie comic guys who were always there, who have stuck with it. But then there's people who are way younger than us who found out about Sam and Max basically because of YouTube and social media. And one of the things that we discovered is that Poker Night, well past its life as a game that was for sale, but just in its life as an online collection of recordings of Poker Night, like Let's Plays or all conversations, montage videos or whatever, they're like a YouTube algorithm switch track, which is a totally crazy thing to learn. Of like, I'm watching a bunch of TF content because I love TF2, and then I land in the YouTube algorithm on every story the Heavy tells in Poker Night, and then that person goes out the other direction going, oh, I really like Sam and Max because Max says a bunch of funny stuff, or because YouTube literally is like, if you liked that, maybe you want to hear all the jokes in the Sam and Max games, or maybe you want to watch a Strong Bad Email. And that was totally not a thing anyone ever imagined when making the game, but it seems... It was surprising to me, I guess, when we worked on the Sam & Max remaster to hear how many people said, oh, I learned about this game because I like watching TF2 shorts on YouTube, or I like watching Strong Bad Emails on YouTube, and then I went through the Poker Night sorting machine, and I came out of it liking Sam & Max. So I do think that over time, this game has just sort of lived inside of the internet in a way that people didn't expect, and is also meant that there's more people now who are like, I've seen a bunch of this just fed to me by an algorithmic AI, and I wish to play the video game, but you will not let me. So now we're going to let people play it.
That's
always
awesome.
A little harrowing to see a something that you lived through doing is now something that people mostly experience through watching in some clip form. Like I remember when the game came out, and now it's a whole different kind of thing.
Well, and it's also people who are like, oh yeah, I played that when I was a kid. And you're like, oh, I'm just gonna go off and
yeah, that's always
my dad.
Yeah, when Telltale went out of business, and there were people who were like, end of an era, an institution is gone. My dad's favorite game company. Like, well, it is what it is.
Dustin, you want to field a question?
Oh yeah. So is there a particular game in your career that you really enjoyed or kind of felt a strong connection with? Like, I know it's hard to pick a favorite child, but if you had to pick a favorite child.
Emily, you have to go first.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard. I didn't work on as many games as Jake did there. I was there from 2006 to 2009. So that's basically the Great Cow Race, Sam & Max Seasons 1 and 2, Strong Bad, Wallace and Gromit, beginning of Monkey Island. Probably Sam & Max Season 2. I don't know if I could pick an episode, but for various reasons, I think that was one of the most fun to work on. Just because we were kind of getting our footing. We knew what we were doing more than we had in the previous season. The studio was a little bit bigger. It was an exciting time at Telltale. So I have fond memories of that.
Yeah,
that was a fun era.
Episode 204 as a classic.
Oh yeah.
especially, yeah.
And yeah, 204 and 205 are also the first time you see like cliffhangers being used. And some of the things that went on to become really important in Telltale storytelling got their start in Sam Max Season 2.
Mm.
I
Jake,
feel
you
like
were gonna
season
say?
2, it was that was for us at least we were doing PR and community stuff at the
Mhm.
time, and that felt like, at least for me, it felt like the first time that I kind of knew what I was doing because we had just come
Because
off
we'd
of
done it
Sam Max
already.
Season 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that generally Sam Max Season 2 is kind of that for the company. Like uh, I'm sure if you asked, Dave Bogan, the art director, or Dave Grossman, who's the one of the lead designers, they would have a different read because they were way more active in the development of the game
Mhm.
than I was or than we were. But I remember, like, I look at Sam Max Season 2 really like nostalgically at this point because that was maybe the only time that Telltale said, okay, we just did one game and it went pretty well, Sam Max Season 1, and now um, without any crazy amount of additional stress or expectations, we're just going to kind of see if we can do another one. We're just going to do it again. And we're just going to do a second Sam and Max game. And then people did it, and it was better than the first one. And it was more self assured and more fun.
Yeah.
And it was basically the same team sticking together and getting a little bigger. Um, Whereas, like, when I think about a game that I'm really proud of having made, like, top of the list at Telltale for me is, I mean, I worked on a lot of games at Telltale, I guess, but the sort of, I guess, go-to answer for me would be Walking Dead Season 1, which I was
Sure, yeah.
one of the season leads on, but that game was also an incredibly stressful
Right.
prospect because we sort of
Right.
realized really quickly how much was riding on it. And then when we got to the end, I kind of hoped for a thing like Sam and Max Season 1, where the studio went, wow, okay, we just pushed ourselves to do a thing that we didn't think we could do, that no one else really thought we could do. Can the next thing we do be, let's just do that again? Let's just do only that one more time to make sure that we can do the same thing a second time. And instead, I think that, because at that point, the studio also had a huge amount of external pressure from its board and from finance people, like from parts of the company that I still don't have any visibility into and never did as an employee. But I knew that the pressure being put on the studio right after Walking Dead Season 1 was, okay, now that you've done that, can you do 3 of them at the same time? So,
Oh
there was
geez.
basically there was never a chance to go, we did it, awesome. Let's now iterate on our craft. Let's iterate on sort of the shape of this as a quote unquote product that we're selling to people, and just get comfortable doing that. And Sam and Max Season 2 was like the one time that we got to do that, and for that reason, it's like it lives in my brain similarly as like, oh, that was a time when I really like, it solidified a lot of feelings I had about Telltale that were really positive.
Yeah. There were
That
other things going on at the company too, like right at the end of Sam Max Season 1, they took a very big investment. They got like $6 or $7 million in investment. And what came after that had kind of different pressures, and there were different people that we had to please and to answer to and stuff. And so I feel like Sam Max Season 2 was already underway at that point.
Yep.
And it did get stressful during that production, but it was really Strong Bad, Wallace and Gromit, Monkey Island, where that stress became more acute, I think, because of the people they now had to answer to because they had been given this money.
Yeah,
And
that
so
was
there were new metrics for how things had to perform, and that kind of stress got handed down to us, which maybe made the experience less fun than Cinemax
yeah.
had been.
I'm still really proud of those games, but Strong Bad and
Yeah,
Wallace and Gromit were being developed basically concurrently, if I
yeah,
remember
Oh wow.
correctly, and that was also the push onto Xbox, PlayStation,
yep,
Wii, and yeah, also it was no longer, hey, GameTap gave us the money to make these, so we
right,
just kind of make them, and then GameTap is happy, and instead there was more investment backed. The financing was investment backed, so there was a demand for a return on investment at a degree that was different than the company I think had experienced before that. If you ever get Dan or Kevin on, you guys can talk about that in great detail, but I don't think either of us still know a ton about that.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, speaking of the Wii port of Strong Bad, I remember that I was pretty young at the time. I found out about Telltale through Strong Bad because I was watching Homestar stuff. I remember that WiiWare download for each episode of
WiiWare.
Strong Bad being the most impressive thing I had seen. Like, because I knew how small those had to be in the file
Yeah.
size, and I
Yeah.
knew how big that the game seemed, at least. Uh,
Yeah. I think
yeah.
we were proud of having packed as much as we possibly could into 40 megabytes per episode, which was the file
40
size
megabytes.
limit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why in Tales of Monkey Island, the bar that you go into that you can't see anything in the first episode is called Club 41 because it's a reference to Club 33 at Disneyland, but it's also like it was. I think at one point it was literally called the 41st Meg, which is a ridiculous thing to name something, but it was literally supposed to be like we are out of file size for the bar in this game, so you walk in and there's just literally you never get to see it. I don't think that joke played for anyone, but it made us happy.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, actually, when Strongbad was the one of the first WiiWare games, and when it came out, there was an issue of that you actually couldn't the WiiWare internal storage, the Wii internal storage for WiiWare was too small to have all 5 episodes on your device at the same time, which was like a complaint. So people would buy one episode and then they're like, well, I don't want to buy any more episodes because I don't have enough room to store it. So when I might not be getting the details of this exactly right, but I feel like halfway through that season, they introduced SD card support, and suddenly our sales like doubled. We did a press release about it. The sales doubled because now you could save 200 megabytes or something like that.
What a
Yeah.
lifesaver.
It
Yeah.
became possible to buy something from their store. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah, that's basically
it was when Telltale started, they really had this vision of these digital storefronts that didn't really do yet what they wanted. They wanted something like iTunes for games, and that just didn't exist yet. And so WiiWare was a step in that direction, but there was a lot of stuff that we were doing to just barely make it work. As far as like having that be a good delivery method for episodic games. So good for you for actually playing that game on WiiWare.
Oh yeah, no, I was excited about it. I was a Nintendo baby. I was a Homestar kid. It was everything. It was
Perfect
was-
storm.
yeah.
My other favorite story about that I might not be interesting to anyone who isn't in PR, but it was difficult to send out review copies of games on the consoles at that time. There wasn't really a method for sending out WiiWare review copies, so we would just have to buy them for people. So when the game came out, we would gift them to people. If you wanted to gift the game to somebody in the UK, you had to import a PAL Wii and then buy them way with pounds. So yeah, so we had a British Wii that I would plug in once a month and like go rack up charges on the credit card, converting dollars to pounds and sending these games to the press. So,
Emily, if you're worried that your
wild.
stories, if you're worried that your stories are too esoteric, remember that we're like 149 episodes deep into a Telltale only podcast.
This is true. This is
It's
true.
true.
Thank
Anyone still listening, this is exactly what they want to hear.
you. All right.
Yeah, I think that Telltale's look toward a kind of iTunes of gaming was pretty prescient, considering what Steam became,
Mhm.
and considering that upward growth toward at least the spike maybe at the first season of The Walking Dead. It was just so impressive. But given the elephant in the room that the company did fall, do you think that there was a single largest factor in why Telltale maybe didn't work out in the end?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, great.
Like we were saying earlier about financial issues and being kind of beholden to people and having a board who wanted, okay, repeat the success of The Walking Dead 3 times. I think that in general there was a lot of I can't think of the expression about paying Peter to
Pay Paul?
to pay.
Was it borrowing from Peter to pay Paul?
Yeah, borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. There was a lot of there basically each game was funding the next game, and there were I think some decisions made as far as how about growing the company and where money was put that was maybe not the smartest, and some games didn't perform the way that they needed them to, and they just ran out of money. And I think that was a problem throughout the company's life cycle, and it even is kind of reminiscent of what happened with Sam Max Freelance Police, where you got to a certain point of development in that game, and then the people who were paying for it, who was LucasArts, decided they didn't want to put in the rest of the money that would be required to have a return on their investment. And that's basically Telltale started from the ashes of that. I think that maybe that's just a game dev story in general, but I think that that's something that Telltale had to contend with for their entire life cycle. And it's at a certain point, it caught up with them, and they had some investment that they were trying to get that would have helped dig them out of it, and it fell through, and they just didn't have any money left.
Yeah, that kind of. I know less about the later history of Telltale than I think you do, Emily, because you've been keeping in touch with a bunch of people. But I feel like the thing I was saying about when Walking Dead came out and then there was suddenly pressure to do 3, I feel like that feeling of it's a content-focused studio that made things that only existed because they were made by the people who were working on them, and because they were story-driven games whose entire purpose was, if you like this franchise that the game is based on, we're going to give you a new story that surprises you as a fan of that franchise. That means that you have to just be doing new work all the time. There's no repeating a trick in a Telltale game. And that pairing with a sort of venture capital backed, like web startup tech company finance model was always a crazy amount of pressure, because the growth that you expect from like your app in like your web 2.0 app, or whatever, your web startup app is one where you put a little bit of money in and then you come up with some sort of repeatable monetization strategy or content strategy that will have exponential growth or a huge multiplier on your investment. Whereas I think Telltale, if you looked at them more like a traditional entertainment company, they probably would have been seen as pretty successful, but I feel like they always had to be chasing a thing that was significantly bigger than what they had already achieved. And at a certain point, that just became impossible, I guess. From the outside, I had hoped that when they had changed executives and the company sort of did their refocus around, I guess it was Walking Dead season 4 and whatever they were doing right then, that they would be shrinking. But it seemed like maybe it was too late at that point. But if they had ever been in a position, at least from the outside and also in my later time there, if they had ever been in a position where it was financially allowed for them to just like, could you just repeat what you last did a couple of times? It seems like it would have maybe worked out better than it did, but they always had to like you end up in a situation where what Emily said is true, where one game is financing the next, but one game is also financing the next plus the aspirations for what comes after that and is even bigger. It means that you never can sort of succeed, take stock, and then make your next thing scoped around the size of the success that you last achieved, which I think is the actual way to be sustainable.
Yeah, I've heard from people who were there at the end that there was never downtime to kind of think about. And Jake, I think you ran into this probably too. There was never really downtime to think about what could we do differently or new. It always had to be, okay, we're going to jump right into the next thing, which is going to be on the same model as the last one because we know that works. And as a result, you end up with like 3 games coming out at the same time. So the games in the end were actually competing with each other. If you have Batman and Guardians of the Galaxy and Minecraft story mode all coming out at the same time, and the audience is a finite audience, they're going to decide between which of those 3 games they want to play, and they're not buying the other 2. So that, I think, is a problem with that's part of why they weren't making the money that they needed to. And there was also all along throughout the company's history, I think, this belief that we're going to be doing licensed games because that helps us tap into an already existing audience. So if we do Sam & Max, and if we do CSI, and we do Strong Bad, like those are 3 separate big audiences that we're going to bring in and like convert into Telltale players. And to an extent that's true, but for the most part, the audiences stayed in their own lanes, and it's also really a subset. So if you have a game like Game of Thrones, the number of people who are watching Game of Thrones on TV every week aren't also going to come by the Telltale game. So there were some misjudgments, I think, as far as, we're going to pay this much money to license this big license because it has a huge audience that's then going to all come and buy our game. And that wasn't always true. So there were some kind of structural issues like that I think led to the financial problem at the end.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting to hear, because there's something that we've been talking about through the run of the podcast, really, which is just like, how easy was it to convert a player into a Telltale fan. And I think during the point and click era, it might have been a little easier, even though things like Monkey Island and Sam and Max and Strong Bad all weren't Telltale owned IP. I remember feeling like there was some kind of synergy there, and it had a Telltale brand feel to it, where if you liked one of them, you were maybe strongly likely to like another one. Where toward the end, it is hard to imagine someone who's coming into Tales from the Borderlands because they like Borderlands also being a potential audience for the Minecraft story mode games. And yeah, it's a difficult, it's difficult, I would imagine, not obviously as someone who has not worked at Telltale, to recruit that kind of demographic into a repeatable fandom.
I think it totally depended on the IP involved. Like I think Emily, you might know better than me, but neither of us were there for the later era of Telltale. But I remember hearing from people who worked on Minecraft that game was. I don't know if you'd get. I don't know if you'd get people who come in to Minecraft story mode to play other Telltale games, but I think that Minecraft story mode as a thing definitely converted a bunch of Minecraft fans over to play it.
Yeah.
Whereas I heard people who worked on the original Tales from the Borderlands describing Telltale fans and Borderland fans as a Venn diagram of two circles that don't touch each other at all. So, like I think it really does depend where, whereas like, yeah, I heard from the Minecraft people that kids would just look on a storefront and go, "What? There's another Minecraft? I want to play it." And then they would just like it because it's more Minecraft stuff, But it was surprising and different. So I think and that's not just to say it's kids versus adults, Like I think the Walking Dead hit at a time when people were amenable to it, and also I think that game brought in fans from TV and from comics. So I think that audience already, I mean, the cable TV audience was maybe different than sort of quote unquote diehard Walking Dead fans, but I think people who liked Walking Dead as Walking Dead were already tuned into the fact that it was a thing that was being adapted, that there were different versions of the story being told, and that what Robert Kirkman was doing with it was sort of moving it around as a living world. Whereas, like, I don't know if you get that out of Game of Thrones. I think it's a harder reach. Yeah. Just like the types of audience are just so different across the different games that I again, like, you probably want to talk to someone who was there more actively during that era than us. But I think that it really, part of it is that's not a repeatable trick, exactly how to get the people interested.
Yeah, I think Sam and Max, Walking Dead, and Minecraft are probably the three best examples of pulling in people from those audiences. And I mean, definitely Walking Dead, people who came in for The Walking Dead did stay for The Wolf Among Us and for some of the later games. But in general, tapping into an audience was not as easy as I think they hoped it would be. And one other thing that just occurred to me too, and this was basically from The Walking Dead on, is as you have the rise of Let's Plays and Twitch and YouTube, the gameplay of the Telltale games at that time, there wasn't really a reason to play them yourself. Like if you watched your favorite YouTuber play The Walking Dead start to finish, you didn't have any reason to buy it yourself. And I don't think that was so much of a problem for The Walking Dead because it really gained this momentum as the episodes were coming out, and so people were buying it because they wanted to go along for the ride. But for later games, if you were kind of lukewarm interested in the license, and the gameplay is going to be basically the same as The Walking Dead and The Wolf Among Us and these other games you've already played, there's no reason not to just tune into a YouTube for the story and then never buy it. And I think that also was one of the issues that they had in the end.
Yeah, I think that your content has to be surprising enough that someone is watching a stream and basically starts shaking out of their chair because they're like, I have to play this myself, and turns the stream off, which is not always a thing that happens. But like, yeah. It's funny you say that, Emily, and I've never really thought that was a problem, but I also wouldn't be surprised if there were a bunch of people at Telltale who really were like, oh no, streamers are eating our audience. Like I think the Dispatch guys were a little bit worried about that, but then it turned out okay for them, where people would watch it on stream and they would kind of do the thing I just described, where partway through they would just go, hold on, I don't, for whatever reason, whether it's I agree with what the person's doing or I disagree or just I want to play it before my favorite streamer does or whatever, people sort of would bail out and start playing it for themselves. But I would totally believe that didn't always happen.
Well, I know that that's something that Dan thinks about because he told me.
Okay.
That in the later days, like, well, and this is, again, this maybe is going too deep in the weeds, but there was a time, I don't remember exactly when this was, but it was kind of when YouTube was becoming big. We were asked to build a video player for the Telltale website, and we kind of didn't understand why we would want to do that when you could just go to YouTube. But that's the sort of thing that I think people with that were, the board or people who were making financial decisions looked at that as an opportunity, and it didn't turn out to be an opportunity that we really continued with. And 10 years later, they were looking at that saying, oh, if only we had done that, we might not be losing money on some of these games that are being played so much by big YouTubers. So yeah, it's who knows what would have happened, what could have happened differently. But I definitely do think that the rise of streaming intersected with the type of games that Telltale were making in a way that was not financially beneficial to the company.
Yeah, I had never thought about that video site in those terms. I remember that, though. We were at Telltale at the time during like the Homestar Runner era. We were making things like little fake behind-the-scenes documentaries starring Strong Bad, and we made a bunch of trailers for the Sam & Max games that were almost little short films. We produced a ton of video content as a studio. So yeah, our web team was asked to make a video site, but like I think everyone else on Earth, we didn't really predict that smartphones would exist and that would lead to people consuming infinite amounts of video. But it is funny to think, oh, we could have integrated that thing with the game client and had like post your favorite clips or like post yourself reacting to I think at the time if someone had asked us to build that in whatever 2008 or 9, we would have just gone, oh gross, that's disgusting, why would we make that? And now I'm like, yeah, okay, for better or worse, there's something there.
The idea of somebody wanting to watch somebody else play an adventure game from start to finish rather than playing it themselves was foreign to us. Like, why would anybody do that?
Oh, sure, yeah.
But clearly we were wrong about that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I tell my parents that I talk into a microphone and people listen to ramblings about video games they could have played, and it doesn't compute. So it just doesn't make sense. I frankly don't understand the appeal myself sometimes. But Emily, as in talking about Telltale's interaction with fans, you've written for AdventureGamer.com.
Yes. Actually, that's how both Jake and I got started at Telltale, was kind of through Adventure Gamers.
Really?
Yeah, cool. we and a few other people were in the community there, and
actually, Telltale's first web programmer, Doug Tobacco, also came from that site.
Came from there. Yeah, I was writing, so I was working in a different industry as a writer, and I wanted to be involved with video games, and I was kind of on this forum, and they said, you want to write for us? And I said, sure, I could figure out how to do that. So I was writing game reviews and stuff like that, and Telltale opened up and happened to, they were 20 minutes away from where I lived. And so I was like, hey, here's my opportunity. So I started, like the day that they opened up, I reached out and sent a resume, and Dan Connors wrote back within like 15 minutes. And he was like, we're not hiring right now, but keep in touch. And I was like, oh my God, they wrote back to me. So a year or two later, when they were starting to hire for the marketing department, they had met both me and Jake through Adventure Gamers. We'd also come and done play tests. We met with them at E3 and stuff like that. So they reached out to both of us on the same day and said, do you want to come in and interview for a job in marketing? And then we were talking to each other about it afterwards, and we were like really excited until we realized that they were asking us to interview for the same job.
Yes, I remember we were sent. there was a furious thread of DMs on the Adventure Gamer forum between me and Emily, being like, "This is awesome. Wait a minute," and then we both sort of like in the forum, do we look like drop pistols on each other right now? And it turned out that we had presented ourselves to the company in different enough ways that they offered both of us jobs, which in hindsight means that we might have both eaten each other's salaries. So that stinks. But we basically both got brought in at the same time.
They split into two jobs. So we were doing web marketing. We were on the web marketing team, and so I was doing the kind of marketing PR and the outward communications to people. Basically, any outside communication the company was doing at that time was going through me in some way. And then Jake was doing building the website and doing product
like
stuff,
community management, stuff.
Yeah. Like, we ran the trade shows. Anyway, sorry, you started to ask a question and I cut you off with the story. But
no, I think this is how interviews go. We're not very experienced.
Perfect.
I'm in the games industry as well, and I have had almost that exact same experience of talking to a friend about a position, and then it turns out we are ruining each other's lives. So happens often enough. But yeah, just a long time adventure game fan going into Telltale must have been a very surreal feeling, especially in the mid-aughts when I don't know how many other companies out there were really furthering that genre in quite the same way.
Yeah, it was a dream come true. It was
yeah,
awesome.
there weren't really any in the United States other than like Dave Gilbert in his apartment, but no one knew that yet.
Yeah.
And
Jake was a big LucasArts fan. I was a big Sierra fan growing up. I somehow never even really heard about LucasArts until adventure games were dead. But I used to say that one of the things that I wanted to do with my as a job was to work at Sierra Online and to like help people get their games running when they wouldn't work, which was ironic that I was later working at Telltale and helping people get their games running when they wouldn't work. But Telltale really was, I feel like kind of the best of what Sierra and LucasArts were in the 80s and 90s, where you had just a company churning out adventure games. And there were some studios in Europe doing that, but there really wasn't anybody else in the US that I could have gone to work for, in the same way.
Right. So I wasn't really around, and I don't think Dustin was either. Dustin, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but in the adventure game fandom, I suppose, I didn't really see the cultural reaction to Telltale, who was a company that was making these point-and-click adventure games, going from a point-and-click adventure game format to this more experimental, less LucasArts-derived narrative choose-em-up sort of format. How did the community at Adventure Gamers react to that pivot, or was it seen as a pivot? Because I think there is some carryover between the two main genres of Telltale games that were coming out.
I think even before that point, there was a lot of conflict or kind of unease in the adventure game community that Telltale basically wasn't calling themselves an adventure game company, and that they wanted to make episodic games. It was like, what is this episodic downloadable? In 2004, 2005, when they were first announcing these plans, people were used to going into a store and buying their games off a shelf in a box. So that was really the first, like, the adventure game community being like, who are these people? This isn't what we know of as an adventure game. So it took some work to kind of get the adventure game community on board with what Telltale was doing. And then Jake, you'll probably have thoughts about this too, but I think once it got to games like The Walking Dead, there was a segment of that fan community who was like, this is great. I'm here for the story. I love this. I love the kind of this new direction. And then the other half was like, this is just an interactive movie. This isn't an adventure game. Give me my puzzles back.
Yeah, I think that the people who were already like, they already make short games that aren't very hard. They've revealed who they truly are, which is people who make short games that aren't very hard.
They tricked us by making Sam and Max, and now they're going to force this other stuff.
Yeah, it's funny to think all the way back to sort of over the history of adventure games, and I think what they meant to people in the 90s. Like, I mean, this is a theory that I have that is, I would admit, 100% unbaked. It's not even half baked because I just thought about it when listening to Emily talk. But when you look at adventure games in the 90s, those games didn't really have to use a lot of your computer for the video game part. So I think as a result, what that might be at least partly why adventure games were some of the highest fidelity experiences you could have on a computer in the 90s. You know, like when you think about Full Throttle or King's Quest 6 or Curse of Monkey Island, Grim Fandango, the later Sierra stuff also was like pushing the edge of what you can do with the CD-ROM drive. That was an era where computers were not like graphics cards hadn't shown up yet, so the 3D like real-time 3D gaming hadn't taken over, and instead it was like how far can we push the art of 2D gaming? And I feel like for adventure game fans right up until the point that graphics cards came out, which is also right around the time that multiplayer showed up, adventure games were like the king of what your computer can do. And also they were filling up that space with extremely intricate, I would say maybe too intricate and too baroque experiences. So when Telltale showed up, they were making games that just 100% were in addition to just being shorter because they're episodic and simpler, partly because they were aiming for a wider audience than that hardcore group, they also just were objectively cheaper games. So if you're a person who is like, what I'm hoping to get out of my adventure game is to sort of tuck into a full, rich audio-visual meal, it took Telltale a long time to get there. So there were people who were skeptical of it, I think, on all fronts. If you were a person who's like, when am I going to get another Grim Fandango? When am I going to get another, when am I going to get another Phantasmagoria? I don't, whatever your thing is, Telltale just wasn't delivering that. So to some, whereas there were some people who were like, I'm in it for the writing and the mood. I've never seen a game that is an adventure game that does the sort of real-time cinematic stuff that even the Sam & Max games were doing in terms of how integrated sort of movie-making rules were into an adventure game. Or there were people who, I'm older now and I want to play them in short bursts, or just I don't get games written by Dave Grossman anymore and I'm getting one. There's a bunch of reasons that people were into Telltale, but I do think there was never a homogenized fan community around. Like the traditional adventure game fan audience was already mixed or split on Telltale for the whole time. So I think that just kind of continued. There are some people who would say Sam & Max Season 2 or Season 3 or Tales of Monkey Island are the closest things that Telltale got to the sort of old big adventure game thing. But like even once they hit Back to the Future and Jurassic Park, Wallace and Gromit, there were the audience already was like, okay, their aspiration is not ever to make a classic full fat point and click adventure game. Yeah. So when it went in the Walking Dead direction, I think people sort of said, oh, they're just fully doing the thing they've always been doing, but just this is the most maximalist version of that, and that was either exciting or frustrating depending on what kind of guy you were.
And actually, something you just said reminded me that even at the beginning, even the graphics, the fact that Telltale was doing 3D graphics was like sacrilege to a large group of adventure game fans, because adventure games are supposed to be 2D. And so the fact that even though these are 3D games that are using like dynamic cameras and we're able to do cool things with animation and everything, it's like, no, you're supposed to be doing that, but it's supposed to be 2D.
Yeah, the guy should be drawing it all.
Set in their ways. Yeah. Yeah, and the length was, people complain the game should be 40 hours long and I should be stuck for weeks on end. And it's just, there was always kind of a disconnect between the old school kind of comic book guy version of an adventure game fan and what Telltale was built to do.
It's not a real adventure game if I can't figure out what to do.
Yeah. That's so funny to hear, because in retrospect, it's hard for me to think of like a classic adventure game and then think of Devil's Playhouse, at the very least Devil's Playhouse, as not being one of the sort of biggest examples of that exact thing. But I could totally see how
the Devil's Playhouse doesn't have inventory combination, and obviously if you don't have inventory item combination, it's not a real adventure game.
That's true.
That's one of the required things.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think time has been kind in particular to the Devil's Playhouse, because that game was, that game came out years after Sam & Max Season 2, but that was definitely, again, like the production of that game was extraordinarily stressful and underwent a bunch of really rough pre-production. Like it changed platforms 2 times over its life. It started off as an Xbox game, then got crunched down and completely redesigned to fit on WiiWare. And then Tales of Monkey Island didn't do super great on WiiWare compared to Strong Bad. So they're like, oh, sorry, the Sam Max audience is probably on big consoles. And it got scaled back up again and turned into a PlayStation 3 game. But I remember when we were in the thick of it on that game, it was the closest to the Sam Max Season 2 feeling, for me at least, of like, oh, we're back. Like everyone's doing the thing. But we had just shipped Tales of Monkey Island, and everyone was okay with the thought that the audience for episode 3 definitely 100% had played episodes 1 and 2, so it was okay to just make the game kind of get bigger and bigger and to have the story complicate itself further and further. So I think that's one that has kind of managed to worm its way into the sort of list of regular adventure games.
Yeah. Well, and it was one of the last, I guess Back to the Future was probably the last point and click that Telltale did, but Devil's Playhouse was one of the last kind of hurrahs of that style before they moved into the Walking Dead style.
In going through the whole Telltale library, the Devil's Playhouse I think really stands out as a very, very strong entry in the series. Dustin, did we put it at we did a ranking, I think, near the end of the original run of the show. Did we put it at number 3 or 4?
I know I had it at number 3 on mine. It was so I had Tales of Monkey Island right at the very top.
Nice.
Sure.
And then I forget if it was Walking Dead season 1 or 4, and then Devil's Playhouse right after.
Nice. That's an allowed ranking.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I was sweating
for
a
his
minute.
opinions when he was, yeah.
Oh, phew.
I think my top 2 were Walking Dead 1 and 4, and then Devil's Playhouse might be 3, or some rearranging of those.
Right.
Yeah, we do love those games.
So going back to the original release of Poker Night for a little bit, what was the process for deciding which characters would be involved? And like, were there any other characters that were maybe considered and didn't quite make the cut?
Oh man. This is testing the limits of my aged, dried out brain.
Do you remember how the Team Fortress thing came about?
Well, I mean, I remember, yeah, including TF was a relatively easy one for us because everyone in the studio at that time was not everyone in the studio, but there was a large group of people who were big Team Fortress 2 players. We were playing in a like sort of intramural developer league called Studio Rumble, which was a tournament ladder. It was a bunch of like scrimmage games and then a tournament ladder where game studios were all fielding TF2 teams. And I don't think we did very well, but we had a lot of fun. But when we were working on Sam Max, the Devil's Playhouse, one of the programmers on that game knew Robin Walker at Valve, who was working on TF, I think just through playing Team Fortress with him. And we wrote to Robin and then by extension the TF2 team about the idea that if you pre-ordered Sam & Max, could we give you items that work inside of Team Fortress 2? Because that was before Team Fortress had the big economy and the store and all that stuff, but they had started to introduce the idea that you could modify your class slightly with items that would change your loadout. And they thought that was a funny and weird idea that there would be another game that would have a crossover item. So if you pre-ordered Sam & Max The Devil's Playhouse, you would get Max's severed head and the Luger morph, which is Max's gun, and you would get Sam's gun, which I think was called the Big Kill, and I think you'd get Sam's hat, and I don't remember what that was called. So we had done this crossover with Valve and with Team Fortress 2 for Sam & Max The Devil's Playhouse. So when Poker Night came up, I think we all thought the Heavy is hilarious. We all know the Meet the Heavy short that the team had put out, and just like it would be fun to sit with that character. Strong Bad was pretty easy because I think we knew Matt Chapman and Mike Chapman and had worked with them on Strong Bad's Cool Game for Attractive People. Max was a no-brainer. He was, we made a bunch of Sam & Max games. We love Max. Everyone in the studio sort of saw Sam & Max as our mascot. And then Tycho, I remember why Tycho exists, and it's because we had I guess by talking through this, I know all the answers. We had been working with Penny Arcade to possibly make a Penny Arcade episodic adventure at Telltale. Me and Sean Vanneman were two of the people who were working on that. That was before Walking Dead, obviously. It was before Poker Night, obviously. It was, I think, before Puzzle Agent. We had an idea for an idea for an episodic game starring Tycho and Gabe from Penny Arcade. It was a sort of like alternate universe like we wanted to take all of the lore from Penny Arcade and then sort of unwind it back into a linear story that was sort of created its own continuity. It was set in time in their lives around when the comic started, so I think it was sort of I don't even remember. I remember that the idea of it was that they go to an author's signing for their favorite fantasy author. He gets a lore question wrong, and they realize that it's a body double and that the guy has been kidnapped. and then it ends up being a road trip story from the Pacific Northwest where they live down to E3.
That's so good.
And the end of it was supposed to be at some sort of weird cult that had kidnapped him, and he was using a typewriter with spikes for keys that the words you type into it makes them manifest in reality. But it was supposed to be those guys on a sort of like Big Lebowski or Pee-wee's Big Adventure style road trip down the West Coast in the late 90s to go to E3. We had pitched some stuff and it was going pretty well, but then the Penny Arcade guys, I think, announced that their episodic RPG game was being put on ice, and they didn't feel comfortable at that time announcing a different other game without having finished that one or having an answer for their community for what was going to happen with the other one. Like, it felt weird to them to be perceived as jumping from one thing to another. So that just got canceled, which was pretty demoralizing to me and Sean at the time. I mean, it worked out because we ended up basically being kind of in rotation to be two of the people who led Walking Dead as a result of that, which is nice. But I remember one of the things with the Penny Arcade game is we were excited about it being kind of spiritually a successor to the Strong Bad games in some ways. I mean, we wanted it to be very cinematic, more like Sam & Max or Back to the Future, but we really liked that the Strong Bad game had a bunch of little weird systems running in it all the time, and I think we thought a Penny Arcade game would make sense to have that kind of feeling where you're doing costume changes and you have a little bit of you have a light bit of stats that are influencing you. And I remember the production team and the owners at Telltale, the producers and the owners were sort of like, well, we make story games and we just invested a huge amount of time in this new dialogue tool that really will allow us to do more richly reactive storytelling. It doesn't make sense to us that you would want this game to have us also invest in a bunch of gameplay systems. That seems questionable. So that was the sort of negative thing looming over the design of the Penny Arcade game that we never resolved when it got canceled. But I remember when they said, okay, we're not working on that, and you guys kind of don't have anything to do. Do you want to do this poker game? Part of what me and Sean and Nick and Tully thought was, okay, well, if you're throwing this gauntlet of use the dialogue tool more, what if we make a game that basically eats the dialogue tool alive and uses it to make as much conversation happen in as many contexts as possible? So that was part of why we pushed so hard in Poker Night to have the characters, banter and conversation sort of run on a dual track with the card playing, so they could sort of weave in and out of calling what they're doing in the game versus not, versus they sort of can silently do the hand gestures that you would do at a poker game when you're having a conversation and sort of let the ebb and flow of conversation go around the table. A lot of that was actually a reaction to, we were told we had to use the dialogue tool more, so we did. But to get back to your question, because of all of that stuff, we knew the Penny Arcade guys. We had a relationship with them. We had briefly talked about the idea of Andrew Chaikin being the voice of Tycho if we did a Penny Arcade game. Man, thinking of the era at the time, I remember one of the people who we talked about as the voice for Gabe was Will Wheaton, which is really funny to me now. But that never would have happened, I don't think, for many reasons, like both the tone of the character and whatever. But that's like such an of that moment thing. But so that was that. But I do remember, like, we at some point Telltale floated the idea of doing something with the Gorillaz, and we had talked about could
man.
Murdoch from the Gorillaz show up in the game. I think we
Oh,
tried
that's great.
That
a
would be
Hail Mary of could he just at least be the bartender, which didn't happen. An obvious go-to for us would have been Guybrush Threepwood from Tales of Monkey Island, but I think at that point no one even asked Lucas about that, because I think it was just like they had already we just hadn't worked together in quite a long time, and the idea of licensing a Lucas character just for a poker game seemed unlikely to people. But so I don't remember if there were other people floated or not. The thing that I remember more consciously was we had decided on the 4 characters, and then we spent a surprising amount of time just choosing which of them sat where at the table, so the shot composed nicely and it looked good. But yeah, that was a very long answer to your question, but I was able to remember all the reasons.
Oh, it's a perfectly long answer.
Yeah. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it, but just the composition of those characters at the table really must have been difficult. The heavy is so much bigger.
Yeah, he ended up in the back because he's bigger, and then I think we tried having Max and Strongbad at the sides, and it was weird. Anyway, I'm happy with how the shot composed, and then the next phase after that was trying to figure out why all 4 of them thought they were there, and have that inform how they all talked about things. If I remember correctly, we decided the game takes place in what Max perceives as reality. Like, he just went from wherever he lived to the inventory to play games, and he doesn't perceive himself as a game character, I guess, unless it's funny. Like, there's a line of dialogue in there where he talks about, I think Tycho asks him about things that he does in a video game, and Max just doesn't understand what he's talking about and only explains things in terms of his lived experience as a character. But then he ends up by saying, and that also happened in Sam & Max seasons 2 and 3. So he and I think Strongbad's thing was he's supposed to be Strongbad from the website, who is aware of the fact that he was licensed by Telltale to be in a video game, and he does not agree with his perception of that, or with the way he was depicted in Strongbad's Cool Game for Attractive People. The heavy has no idea what's going on and just sort of respawned into Poker Night, and then he hopes that when he, I think he just doesn't understand what's happening. And then Tycho is aware of the fact that he's at an exclusive club where pop culture characters hang out, and he has played all of their games. So that was we wanted them to all sort of have slightly different takes on why they're there, in the hopes that would make their conversations a little bit more dynamic. And and then we made Poker Night for 80 days.
And how about the setting of the inventory? Where did that come from?
That was just, well, we actually initially pitched it as a thing called Poker Night in the mystery space, and the mystery space was a weird void hole in the back of Telltale's office, which
that's funny.
I actually did a gray block mock-up of that with, like, yeah, our office was in a building right sort of across the freeway from San Quentin prison, and it was, a classic 90s office complex. But there was a situation where the city wouldn't let the owner expand the middle of the building into office because there was not enough parking, because he had to give a bunch of parking lot space to the public park access along the shoreline. Look, we're 150 episodes into a Telltale podcast. People need the lore of Telltale's office building circa 2010.
This is potentially important stuff. Yeah.
It's unimportant as all hell, but we had talked about the idea that the game could open with an FMV sequence where the cameraman rolls up in a limousine, and then Nick Herman, who's a Telltale employee, would wear a tuxedo and just walk you up through our office into this back room, and then at a certain point we would switch from FMV to in-engine, and it would just be that same disgusting back room. But like, the idea was that it was actually a backroom card game held at the Telltale Games office where a bunch of game characters played poker. And that ended up, this is almost silly to say, but that just wasn't very aspirational as a space. It wasn't very like a fun thing to consider. So we said, okay, well, what if it's actually just in a secret actual, what if there's a classy version of this that, is I guess kind of like the nightclub scene in Who Framed Roger Rabbit is such an easy go-to for this. So we just invented the inventory and invented the backstory of it as part of the sort of pre-production of the game. I think with the hopes that the inventory could sort of live as a thing. Like, we thought, wouldn't it be fun if you can 6 months from now, load up your copy of this game and play a game of backgammon against the sniper from Team Fortress or something. But I think the inventory as a living space, as like game character hangout as a service, was not a thing that people were interested in doing or understand. And instead, a few years later, they did Poker Night 2, which is its own totally cool thing. But yeah, the inventory was sort of just what would be the coolest place to hang out and play games with these characters. And it was like, well, it's maybe do it as a place that looks kind of like it was kind of inspired by the bar, the House of Shields in San Francisco, which has that. It's an old timey bar that has that big verticality to it and a bunch of booths and stuff. But yeah, that's it.
My dreams of beach volleyball at the inventory have been shattered.
Yeah, it's true. We did a PAX panel. Telltale used to do panels at PAX where we'd bring the game engine and have people just sort of sloppily write a scene as an audience, and then we would really quickly build it in the background during the Q&A and let people play it. So we did a PAX panel that was I think the last Telltale Make a Scene panel that was we're going to do Murder at the Inventory, which was one of the characters from a Telltale game has been murdered, and then one of the other characters is a detective who walks around and interrogates people. And that was kind of fun. We recorded dialogue in Poker Night at the Inventory that ends when the idea was like after you've won all of the items, the next time you win a tournament, someone in the inventory is murdered, and the host talks about it. And I don't know why we recorded that. I think we just thought it would be really funny if the game vaguely promised the idea that the next Telltale or the next Poker Night game would somehow be like a Clue murder mystery or something. We didn't put it in the game because we had no idea what it meant. We just I think thought it was totally fucking funny. But the powers that be and our own sense of what would confuse and annoy people, I guess, won out, and that dialogue didn't ship. But yeah, maybe we should have made a murder mystery sequel.
It's in the game. People found it, and then
the dialogue shipped out in the TT arc file, but it didn't. It never got hooked up.
I love that idea for a game, a murder mystery Telltale crossover thing. That is so good.
Yeah, I think we'd been playing. There was a board game called Kill Dr. Lucky that we'd been playing a little bit of at the time, and thought maybe there's some way that we could do a detective story, but all of the also everyone on that project and like anyone with good taste really liked the Clue movie and the idea of could there be a star-studded murder mystery video game that all takes place in sort of the winding labyrinth passages of this old abandoned game warehouse turned into speakeasy. Was like, that's kind of fun, but what the heck is it? Nobody could have told you what the actual game design was.
Something Dustin and I have talked about a few times. Well, Dustin's been very kind to listen to me talk about it. It's just the idea that Knives Out could be a Telltale game where every episode Benoit Blanc is going around solving another mystery. We like to pitch Telltale games to each other a lot. Another is Conker's Bad Fur Day. That would be another potential one there.
We just say, wouldn't it be great?
Wouldn't it be great? We say Into the Void.
Conker's Bad Fur Day, the Telltale series, is a thing that I don't know that I would have wanted, and I still don't know that I want, but I respect that that's what you want.
Yeah, Conker's tough. The exact jokes it makes are pretty not great anymore, or maybe ever. But to imagine other forms Conker could take in, the adventure game form kind of, it feels like it's something, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's already very narrative focused. It feels like it wouldn't be too big a stretch to make.
I could imagine him combining items. I think he could do it. I think he's got the.
And now we got a game.
Yeah, if you can combine items, then you've passed at least the first hurdle. So
right.
I think you guys should pursue this as your post telling the tale project, is getting that game going.
Yeah, that sounds easy enough.
I have a question for Jake. So I am a massive fan of Tales of Monkey Island. It's not only my favorite in the Monkey Island series, but my favorite game Telltale's ever done. And so how did it feel taking the helm of a beloved legacy IP like Monkey Island? Were there any sort of pressures to make sure it lives up to fan expectations or anything?
I can't speak for everyone on the team, but I think that some of us, including me, when we first heard that Telltale was making a Monkey Island, just went, "Oh no,
Oh
nope,
no.
no. Please, can we not do that?" And that's maybe too strong of a reaction, but it was, for me at least, my adventure game fanboy brain activated immediately, and I kind of became the people on the forum who have various criticisms of Telltale. Where I thought, for me, what a Monkey Island game is at its ideal is you are throwing all of the money and the artistry at the screen that can possibly fit inside of your computer. And the thought of having to do that on a Nintendo Wii download store was completely terrifying. It was honestly completely terrifying to me, even from the perspective of, like, we just shipped Wallace and Gromit, we shipped Sam and Max Season 2, everyone was proud of those games. Like, how do you take a thing shaped like Monkey Island, which is, the when you think of the middle of Monkey Island 2, it's this sprawling thing across 3 islands with a world map and 4 giant interconnected puzzle chains. And how do you take that and sort of flatten it out into a thing that can be told in 5 discrete chapters that each only are allowed 12 rooms, or whatever? It was really, honestly, pretty harrowing to me to think about how to do it. And I think personally, I ended up being proud of a lot of little things in the game. I especially was really, really proud of how the story came out, but I think it took me until a really long time after I had left Telltale to look back at that and go, the amount of, like, sort of cinematic panache and style, especially from the work that Ryan Jones, the concept artist, and Derek Sakai and Dave Bogan on art and animation direction, and Brian and Kim and the rest of the environment team. Like, I think that they got so much flavor into so little space that, like, I am retroactively really impressed by that game. But I think at the time I spent most of the production kind of not enjoying it as much as I should have, because I was always a little bit bummed out that we weren't, like, I remember at the time just thinking, I wish we could be shipping on the same platform that Wallace and Gromit had just shipped on, because then we would at least get normal maps and real-time shadows. And I was so fixated on that kind of stuff at the time that I was just sort of like, but, like, looking back at it now, I think it's cool. And I am always kind of sad that because it's episodic and because it fell into a weird hole. It's licensed from Disney instead of owned by them, so it doesn't show up in all the same ordered lists with the other games. It's kind of like it's the one that you have to be told to go play, I think, if you're a Monkey Island fan, and that kind of makes me sad, because I think it does a bunch of stuff that is pretty awesome. I also loved playing Return to Monkey Island, which, was co-written by Dave Grossman, who was the head of the writing team at Telltale, or the head of the writer and designers at Telltale at the time of Tales of Monkey Island. But so many of the sort of things that ended up kind of being thematic through lines across Tales of Monkey Island by the time we were done, as well as a lot of the character relationships and how they were presented, got picked up and I think kind of elevated by the work that he and Ron Gilbert did in Return to Monkey Island. Like, I think Return kind of retroactively makes Tales an even stronger entry in the franchise, and I thought that was awesome. So I don't know. I guess I have a complicated relationship personally as a big Monkey Island nerd with Tales of Monkey Island, but ultimately, it's awesome to have worked on it, even though at the time working on it completely stressed me out and kind of short circuited my brain in bad ways.
Geez.
I worked so hard on that game, but so much of it was out of sort of annoyance or despair at the fact that the box we were trying to fit Monkey Island in was so tiny, that I wasn't able to sort of enjoy it at the time. So now I think it's cool. So
well, that's also the game where you kind of jumped into game design, right? Like, you up to that point hadn't been as hands-on with the games as you were with Tales of Monkey Island.
Yeah, I snuck in on Strong Bad because there was so much user interface work, and I had done a little bit of, I was in the sort of writer designers rooms for Strong Bad a little bit, but Monkey Island was the first one where Telltale introduced the idea of directors for episodes. Previously, it had sort of been a handoff between the animation director, the art director, and the lead writer designer of any episode were sort of also the ones doing direction, and they realized it would maybe be nice to have a person whose entire job was to sort of be a creative, like a switchboard, a traffic manager on a project, but also who had a creative eye and was able to spend a bunch of time looking at it from a very high level job. Like on the Sam & Max games, I remember there was kind of a rule that there were 3 expensive cutscenes allowed per episode because the animation team only had time to make 3 big ones, and the rest of them all had to kind of be built from parts. But it ended up settling into a thing that they're like, okay, we're going to do one at the beginning of the game, we're going to do one at the middle of the game, and we're going to do one at the end of the game. And people who were doing that work eventually realized those aren't always the best moments to spend that time, but there was no one really to make those kinds of calls, and the role of director ended up getting formed, I think, almost literally because of that one cutscene thing. But it meant that on Tales of Monkey Island, I ended up, I think, co-directing or directing on episodes 3 and 5, and then I was in the writing and design room for a good chunk of the season. Not as much as the actual full-time writers and designers on that game, though. Like Mark Darren, Mike Stemley, Dave Grossman, Joe Penny, etc. Those guys were, you know, in there every day just grinding it out. Chuck Jordan for the beginning of the season, but yeah, I remember I ended up full-time directing on episodes 3 and 5, so I was deep in the guts of it on that game, and it was stressful for that reason too, I guess. But yeah, being thrown into the pool on what was ostensibly the game series that got me into video games and adventure games, and sort of is why I had that job, was like, oh boy,
No pressure.
yeah, maybe we could do something I care about less. That would be awesome.
Well, that's awesome. I think you did a great job. I adore that game.
Oh, thanks. It was probably Mark and Mike and everyone else though, but thank you.
Oh.
Okay, we'll take it back then.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's correct.
Well, actually, episode 5 in particular, we didn't do a full ranking of every single episode of anything that Telltale ever did. That would take years just to do, but I guess we had the time. But episode 5 of Monkey Island is a really high up single episode for us
sure
as well.
I think it just gets better and better as it goes. Episode 5 is just so good.
Yeah, people got more comfortable with how much stuff we could actually squish into 40 megs if everyone was both sort of careful and daring about it. So episode 5, we were more freed up than we were on episode 1 in terms of the scope that it turns out you could actually squish down into like 35 floppy disks. So weird. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't stop thinking about 40 megs. That's just the last game launch that I touched was over 100 gigs. So I can't even fathom it.
Yeah, I remember we told Michael Land, the composer of the Monkey Island series, that for this one we were going back to MIDI. He like laughed like we were joking, and then actually was like, "Oh, you're serious? Okay." Okay. So, it's cool if you're an old school game fan, I guess, that you get MIDI music in a Monkey Island game in 2009 or 10 or whenever that was. But so it goes. It's the magic of 40 megs.
Real quick before we let you go, Dustin and I both, in our independent research for this interview, found out about your dollhouse hobby, Emily, and we are ecstatic about it.
Did you?
I
see
love
the
them.
Sam & Max?
I was looking through them like all last night.
Did you see the Sam & Max one?
Oh yeah, for sure. That was the one I wanted to bring up.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't.
Oh, you didn't?
Oh,
No, tell me about it.
It's so a few years ago, a company called Boss Fight made 1-inch scale Sam & Max figures, which is the standard dollhouse scale, 1 inch equals 1 foot. And so I made a room box of like a diorama of their office based on what it looked like in the Telltale series. I never actually finished it, but I got pretty close. But yeah, no, it was fun.
It's very cool.
But
it's
yeah,
really good.
I build dollhouses. That's about as far away from video games as you could get, I guess. But that is my weird hobby.
Where did it come from? Was it just a hobby that just developed over time, or
Yeah, something I liked when I was a kid, like playing adventure games, I guess. I liked doing it when I was a kid, and then when I was an adult and had my own money. It's like, oh, I could do this, and so I built my first one, and then I got into half scale, which is 1 inch equals 2 feet, so they're smaller, so you can have more of them all over your house. Now I have like 25 doll houses.
Oh wow,
man.
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot of doll houses. I also tend to start them and get like halfway finished with them and then not finish them. So I have a lot of unfinished doll houses around my house.
There has to be some connection between adventure games, which are the games where you walk around the tiny little one room, one perspective spaces, and then also building 4 zillion of them yourself.
Well, I did one that's a bar. It's a diorama of a bar, and there's all these people there, and it's kind of like environmental storytelling, because you put the figures in the places you want them to be, and there's a spilled drink over there, and there's a guy like chatting with somebody while his girlfriend's in the bathroom, and so it's like all the kind of storytelling stuff that you could pick up just from where items have been arranged. And I think there is a story that happens in my brain as I'm putting these things together, but maybe I'm the only one who ever hears that story.
Are you worried about a potential Smurf infestation having so many appropriately sized houses for them?
I actually, funny you should ask that. I actually have a Smurf collection that used to be out on my shelf at Telltale. So,
man, halfway through that joke, I thought this is the stupidest joke. I wish I could start over, and it turned out to be something that was great.
It really worked.
Yeah, it was Emily lore after all.
I'll tell you that some of my Smurfs I've realized are missing, and I want to know who at Telltale stole them 15 years ago. Yeah, so. That's my murder at the inventory. Yeah, who napped the Smurfs?
There's a game. Who kidnapped the Smurfs?
But no, the Cinemax, like, there was something very cool to me about being able to take a video game, a location that I know so well from a game, and make it kind of something you can touch, and something that these 3-dimensional characters exist in there. Yeah, so that was fun, and I there's pictures on my website if people want to check it out.
That's fantastic, and we can put a link in the show notes as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you both so much for being on the show. We've really appreciated it. It's a lot of great Telltale lore that I don't think either of us were actually expecting to get.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. Anything else you want to touch on before we let you go?
Poker Night's coming out.
Yeah.
When is this going to air?
That's an important one.
This will air. Well, we're kind of off schedule because we stopped having content for episodes, so it can kind of air whenever. It'll be before the game comes out. We'll have information about that as well in the show notes.
Well, I would just say, Poker Night's coming out on March 5th on PlayStation, Nintendo Switch, and Steam. And actually, we're going to have a pre-order, or not a pre-order, but a launch bonus on Steam, where if you buy it in the first 2 weeks, you get the Dealer's Visor, which was originally a special item that was a pre-order bonus back when the game first came out. So if you're into the Team Fortress items, make sure you buy the game on Steam in the first 2 weeks so you can get that. Because after that, it's going back into the vault.
Ooh, what a threat!
Look, it's not a threat; it's a fact.
Yeah.
If you find it threatening, that's on you.
Yeah, buy it if you know what's good for you.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And thank you for having us on. It was great chatting with you. I love this podcast. I'm glad you went through the whole Telltale history with such dedication and care.
Oh, thank you so much. It's our pleasure.
The company.
Thanks for playing Law and Order Legacy.
So. Yeah, right.
Oh, that was our biggest. Yeah, that was
an event.
A white whale for a while, actually.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I enjoyed your CSI 3 Dimensions of Murder episode. Because there's a version of that game that Telltale did not make for, I think, the PlayStation, I think one of you played that, and you're like, this doesn't make any sense. This game is horrible, and the whole time I wanted to be like, it wasn't our fault. We didn't do it.
I didn't know that at all. That's hilarious.
Yeah, it was outsourced by Ubisoft to some studio in Croatia or something.
Oh, crazy!
That is
interesting.
That was not officially disclosed. Because we did.
I don't think we knew about
version
that.
of 3 Dimensions of Murder, and I mean,
Didn't
Cards
work
on the
very
Table.
well.
It was the worst. It was very difficult moment to keep doing the podcast.
It just sucked
We had to
all
really
the-
look inside ourselves.
all the excitement out of it.
I don't know if I can advocate for you guys going and doing a makeup episode for a different version of 3 Dimensions of Murder, though. But just if you're
Yeah.
really desperate for new episodes, the original uncompromised vision is out there somewhere.
Yeah.
we always do this. We always keep finding these little reasons to keep
We just
going
can't
back to the
stay
show.
away.
Well, it's
Maybe we
actually
should.
ironic. When Telltale started, one of the big things that people were upset about and worried about was like, well, what's going to happen to my games if your company goes out of business? We can't have downloadable games. I need to have a game that's on my shelf on a disc so I can play it in 20 years if you go out of business. And the irony there is that CSI 3 Dimensions of Murder is probably the only Telltale game that did not come out in downloadable form, and it's impossible to find now.
Yeah.
Right.
So, or if you do find it, it won't work in your computer that doesn't have a DVD drive. So
Yeah, the really hard one was Law and Order Legacies, which
Yeah.
I
Because
guess
it's just a iOS app, right?
iOS. I think it was.
Yeah.
it was on PC.
Oh.
And I
Delisted.
Yeah.
it was not delisted because of the fall of the company, though. It was
No.
delisted independently way earlier than
Right.
that.
Yeah, because the licensing.
Oh, rights
yeah.
lapsed, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and I would imagine that it was bringing in less money than it would cost. But yeah, that one, I guess we don't want to say what we did, but it wasn't quite piracy. It was something else, and we really got there with that game. But we did make sure we were complete about it. Yeah, well, thank you so much. It's been wonderful. And yeah,
For
Poker Night
sure.
in the Inventory coming out soon. And until next time, have a great summer, everyone.
Have a great summer.
Have a great summer.
Okay. Thank you.